Hey people, welcome back to Phrozen Gaming. This is the second part of my three-part series for Hiroshi Yamauchi. This part is pretty much going into the whole console wars thing, starting from when Sega entered the market to compete against Nintendo. I hope you guys enjoy, and yeah, here we go. In the mid-80s, Sega entered the home console business with their console, the Master System. It wasn't highly successful, but it did find some success here in Australia. In 1988, Sega's success boomed even further with their Sega Genesis, or known here in Australia as the Mega Drive. With superior graphics and sound, just blew away any other console at the time. Nintendo retaliated with their next console, the Super Nintendo, in 1990, sparking up one of the biggest console wars in gaming history. The year before that, Nintendo had released the Game Boy, the most successful handheld gaming device in history, with its upgraded versions such as the Pocket and the Color models extending its lifetime. It stayed unrivaled for the entirety of its shelf life, even though Atari and Sega released handheld devices superior to the Game Boy, boasting better graphics and actual color, were let down by a terrible battery life and lack of games. The Super Nintendo was a great success, boasting an incredible game library with titles such as The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country. Nintendo had intended to expand the life of the Super NES with an add-on to the system that would play discs to, like the Sega CD did with Genesis. Nintendo continued to work with Sony after Sony helped to develop the sound processor in the Super NES to create an add-on that was to be named the PlayStation. But when Sony wanted more profit from the game console, Nintendo secretly formed a partnership with Philips, which didn't really bear fruit, and in return ended up giving Philips the right to make games based on Nintendo franchises, such as their horrible Zelda game on the CDI. When Sony had learnt of this deception, out of revenge, they pushed to complete the development of the console add-on they were previously working on with Nintendo to release it as a separate console. They created the Sony PlayStation, a machine that was purely made to destroy Nintendo. During this time, Sega released the Sega Saturn, which sold poorly. Even though it being more superior to the Super NES and the Genesis, it lacked in the games department. This would lead to a steep decline that would end Sega's battle in the console race. Sony soon followed with the release of the PlayStation. It proved extremely successful and dominated that generation of gaming, even when Nintendo had released its competitor, the Nintendo 64. Nintendo lost many exclusive third-party developers with the release of the Nintendo 64. Due to Nintendo's strict approval system, its limited storage capacity on the cartridges, costs and difficulty of development, it had them migrating to Sony's console. They also had a big fallout with one of their highly successful third-party developers, Squaresoft, which would prove to be a big boost to Sony's system and a large blow to Nintendo. The loss of the third-party support left Nintendo with a much smaller library than the PlayStation, with their first-party games left having to try and pull in the sales to remain competitive. With games like Zelda: Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye and Mario 64, it did well, but nothing they did could have ever caught the PlayStation and the success it was achieving. Sega jumped into the next generation with the Dreamcast, which had awesome graphics never seen before and intuitive add-ons that would become a staple for future generations. Unfortunately, due to their lack of games, the terrible performance of the Saturn, and the announcement of the PlayStation 2, Sega was still not able to get a strong foothold in the console battle, and this ended up being the last console they released. They now only exist as a third-party developer, just like Atari. Sony released the PlayStation 2, again a highly successful console, boasting amazing graphics, the same controller as the original but with force feedback buttons and the capability to play DVDs. It was a highly appealing console to consumers. Due to the success of Sony in the gaming console market, a huge company was about to make its entrance into the game console market: Microsoft. Microsoft introduced its entrant, the Xbox, into the console battle to try and capitalize on this booming market, releasing their console almost at the same time as Nintendo's new console, the GameCube. The Xbox introduced the built-in hard drive, eliminating the need for a memory card. It too, like the PlayStation, played DVDs but required a DVD remote. It performed slightly better than the PS2 graphically, but its main flaw was the size of the console itself and its ridiculously large control, which even for someone like me with large hands was still a struggle to work with. The GameCube, on the other hand, was quite small compared to the other two consoles, and had a very interesting and unique controller that took some time to get used to with a completely bizarre button layout. Nintendo opted instead to use mini DVD discs as opposed to the full-size ones as a choice they made to try and deter pirates, as was their choice for cartridges the previous generation. It's not known to many people, but in this generation, Nintendo actually had the most powerful console by a fair bit. While the processors in the Xbox and the PlayStation couldn't even crack 1 GHz, the GameCube, if required, could crack 3 GHz due to its different architecture in the processor, which was an IBM Copper processor, codenamed Gecko, as opposed to the silicon-based processors in the other consoles. This could be easily noticed when playing Fight Night, where in that case, the power hook punch actually moved faster than the normal hook punch on the other consoles. WrestleMania performed noticeably faster compared to SmackDown and on PS2, and much faster than Raw on Xbox, and loading times were incredibly quicker out of all the three. But due to the lack of games and third-party developers, which had increased slightly due to the success of the Game Boy Advance, but was not enough to compete with the PS2, as it seemed to appeal to a younger audience. The Xbox also struggled, but fared slightly better than the GameCube. And Nintendo released the Nintendo DS, the successor to the Game Boy Advance. And up to this point, Nintendo had no competition in the handheld market. The only decent direct competition followed shortly with Sony's PSP, which stood for PlayStation Portable. But although it had better graphics, the ability to play music, videos, pictures, download PS1 games, and a large game library, it could not topple the Nintendo DS and its appeal to a number of demographics. In the next and current generation saw Nintendo launch back to the top with the Wii, even though being a late entry into the generation. The first console was Microsoft Xbox's 360, which did extremely well and dominated for a while, obviously because it had no direct competition for pretty much a year. Nintendo released their console very close to Sony's new console, the PlayStation 3, which was the most powerful out of the three when not bottlenecked by third-party developer ports from the Xbox 360. But the Wii took a completely different approach. The Wii can be summed up as a slimline GameCube with motion controls. The very first and only successful console to use motion-based gaming as its core. With the success of the Nintendo DS and the direction of Nintendo's new console, they gained a lot of developers back, gaining a huge library of games rather rapidly and appealing to almost every type of gamer, and even non-gamers. Nintendo created the most successful console of all time, with Sony and Microsoft trying to cash in on the recent motion-based gaming boom by releasing their own motion controls. Sony with the Move for PS3, a slightly more accurate copycat of the Wii Remote Plus, and Microsoft with Kinect for Xbox 360, an extremely hyped underachiever camera that measured a player's motions similar to Sony's PlayStation Eye camera, but also detect depth. Neither of these were anywhere near as successful as the Wii. Nintendo during this generation was finally knocked off the top spot for handheld gaming by a very unexpected market, the mobile market. Majorly Apple and more recently Android, but are yet to be beaten by a direct competitor. Even with the successor of the DS, the 3DS, struggling to gain traction initially due to price and lack of games, Sony's new handheld, the PS Vita, with amazing technologies such as single-screen touchscreen, buttons, accelerometer, dual analogs, touchpad, 3G connectivity and amazing graphics that appear better than the PS2 and almost as good as the PS3, all on a 5-inch 720p resolution screen, still struggle to reach the top spot, even compared to, the very basic 3DS. Nintendo has jumped in first to the next generation with the Wii U, which is really struggling at the moment. I think due to Nintendo's weird way of promoting it, which originally came across to me as a tablet add-on to the original Wii. It just really confused me, and a lot of people. Its lack of game struggles to make people commit. Not to mention its graphical performance isn't even quite up to par with the current gen consoles. But as Nintendo's proved, in many cases, it's not all about graphics. Thank you for watching the second part of my 3-part series for Hiroshi Yamauchi. If you guys liked the video, remember to hit that like button, it really helps out. If you want to comment about anything that I've left out that you think is crucial to the story, put it down below, or if I got some details wrong, it's a possibility that I did. So yeah, leave comments down below. You can also follow me on my Twitter, my Google+, and my Facebook. The links are down below in the description. And if you want to stay up to date with my videos and you want to catch the third part of this series, remember to hit that subscribe button, as I'll be having it up very shortly. And until I see you guys again, stay frosty. Hiroshi Yamauchi, former president of Nintendo, passed away on the 19th of September at the age of 85 after losing his battle with pneumonia. This was a huge loss not only to loved ones and friends that knew him, but also the gaming community. Many people, when they think Nintendo, think about Mario, Link, and